Hi. Good to see you all here. I am Jan Patterson of Theater Lovers Club. Theater Lovers Club is the audience development arm of Theater Santa Fe, which a lot of people don't know, but that's kind of our semi-official capacity. And our job is to put butts on seats any way we can.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, we love it. We love it, absolutely. Tonight, after the panel, the Q&A, there'll be a Q&A, so you all get a chance to ask a question, because I made up really hard ones. So it would be really entertaining. Anyhow, welcome to 4 Actors, 4 Reveals.
Oh. Wait, I have to reveal?
This is as close as I will ever get to acting on stage. And if you guys don't know all, or at least one of these actors, you're not really a theater goer in Santa Fe, as far as I'm concerned. Because I've seen all of these guys act, and that's why I had the privilege of hand kind of picking them for their various approaches to theater for tonight's experience. So I hope you love it. Think up your questions and all that. So typically we'd start this with a reading of the bios, which is like not the bylaws. But I have this many pages of history on these guys, and we would take up the entire hour. Well, look at Patrick, I mean, one whole page. So I made an artistic director's decision to not read them, and I hope that's okay with you guys, because at the end, what we'll do is have you tell us what's next, what's going on that you're in or about to be in, that sort of thing. So that to me was, and if anybody wants these, I'm very happy to share them. So I got this book at the behest of April Cleveland, whom many of you may know as artistic director of Exodus Theater. And so I thought, okay, she said, this is what you have to have. So I'm opening it at this page that I marked. And I read what this guy, Denis Diderot, said. He's a 17th century French philosopher about acting on stage. He said, the actor who has nothing but reason and calculation is frigid. If on the stage you do not feel that you are alone, the case is hopeless.
Would you repeat that, Jan?
A little louder.
This way, out to the house, Jan.
All right, the actor who has nothing but reason and calculation is frigid. If on the stage you do not feel that you are alone, the case is hopeless. Enough of that, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I had time.
It was the 17th century.
I don't want you to read that.
I think not to ask Johnny and tell him not to read it.
Once a Johnny, always a Johnny.
Yeah. So, I did these questions a while ago, and I did send them to these guys, so there's no surprises here. And the first question everybody always wants to know, at least I do, from an actor is, why on earth the stage? What's the hook? Why are you up here right now, of course? And so I'd love to hear from each of you. And if you guys want to share with each other, project out into the audience, why the stage? What gets you there? What's the hook?
Well,
Oh, I didn't introduce Hania, Patrick, Brent, and Alexander. Sorry, I'm not introducing everybody. You think this is my show and it's not. Okay,
Well, I guess, yeah, I'll start since I'm on this side. My parents were actors, so it's sort of in the blood a little bit, and I did my best to avoid becoming an actor, but just couldn't help it, really. I did a little as a kid. My mother was an educator in the theater, and so would drag me along, and that became a sort of daycare for me, and the moms and the backstage and the costume shop and scene shop of the theater where she worked was where I did a little bit of my growing up. And it was, I don't know, I guess I didn't realize how much I loved it until I started doing it more. I did probably one play in high school, and then a couple of musicals in college. And then I was working at the Children's Museum after school here, the Children's Museum here. And some of you may know Rosemary Ziebert. She was there with her grandchildren. She was there with her grandchildren or grandchild, and we were just chatting, and she turns to me and said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes, I guess." And that was my first show in Santa Fe, and I've just been doing it ever since, and that was 2012. And I just can't help myself. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. I love doing it, and I've made a lot of friends in the community here. If you saw complete works of William Shakespeare at Briggs, those are some of my favorite people to work with. Thank you. I mean, not to exclude anyone, but I've known them for about a decade, Joey Beth and Hamilton, and I just have a ton of fun. And when people ask me why I keep doing it or what I love about it is that it's always an exploration of human nature, and I love to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and it kind of helps me in a therapeutic way figure out the things in my life. You know, how does somebody else deal with this, or how does somebody else not deal with this? You know, and so it's so fascinating to me to explore the whole human. You know, and that's why the stage for me.
Awesome. Great. All right. Patrick.
You know, I'm not an overly loquacious human to start with.
What are you saying?
And as a child, I was very, very shy, almost debilitatingly so. And in the fourth grade, my teacher, Mrs. Raymond, for some reason, beyond my comprehension, chose the smallest, shyest kid in the class to play Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. And I found an acceptance that I had never found before. It was, you know, I found I could memorize lines. I found I could hold an audience. I found I got an attention that I'd never gotten before, and an acceptance that I'd never got before. And from that point on, it just kind of kept growing on through high school, and then I got a BFA in acting from the great University of Eastern New Mexico. Well known for its theater programs. And yeah, it just kind of kept going on from there. You know, it was just, at first it was a way to operate in public without having to be myself. And get acceptance in that way. And I guess that's why it just, you know, it just keeps coming back. I've never been able to get rid of it. You know, when my mentor, Louis Burke, who's a fantastical theatrical freak from South Africa.
Who is this?
Louis Burke. He produced Meeting in St. Louis on Broadway. He produced and directed. But when I started seeing him, he said, the first thing he said was, if there is anything you can do other than acting, do it. And I listened to him to a certain degree. You know, I've done just about everything. I settled on being a handyman and doing theater on the side. I had a family. I needed to make money. Theater's not a good way to make money. But yeah, it just kept coming back. I could never quite shake myself.
Moves in.
Yeah, it moved in and settled.
Would you ever give that advice to another would-be actor?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the first thing you say. Because you want them to avoid the suffering, if possible.
Do you still do handyman work?
For a select few. Now
I
now
prune
follow.
trees and design gardens. The day job.
I'm writing that.
So while we're advertising.
Yeah, free advertising.
But that's why I continue to play on the stage.
Brent, how about you?
Well, I guess a lot of it's very similar to what Patrick said. I grew up pretty shy and in the middle of nowhere in Indiana, and like we didn't even have close neighbors. So I would just wander around, especially in the summers, you know, crawling under bridges and getting into water that I probably shouldn't have been in, things like that. But I would wander around and do crazy cartoon voices that I'd seen on TV. That's just how I entertained myself. And so eventually some of those voices came in handy when I was in like junior high and high school, and I started getting cast in plays, which was kind of fun to get a little attention for that. And my biggest jumping off point was my senior year of high school. I did a production of How to Succeed in Business, which was mostly made up of people who were in the music department, which I wasn't at that point. But I got a role that I had a song. I did Mr. Brat, who does Secretary is Not a Toy. And in our little school newspaper, this girl, Missy Carson, who had never given me the time of day, she was from the good side of the tracks, she wrote this thing that said, the obvious highlight of the show was Brent Black as Bert Brat. And so I jumped on my motorcycle, bought a dozen roses, and ran to her house, and we dated for the rest of the summer. And it was like, theater. That's
I wrote down sex.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
So can you do Elmer Fudd for us?
Probably not off the bat.
Can you do Elmer Fudd for us?
No. I don't take your requests.
Actors get real shy when asked to act on demand.
It's true.
Yeah, I was a pretty listless kid in high school, and I was like, and I needed to select an elective my junior year, and I said, oh, I'll take drama because I won't have any homework. And it just so happened that a couple by the name of Joey and Robin Chavez were running the high school theater, and that was it. You know, the final for that class was doing a one-act plays, and I think something that really struck me was like everyone in that class was from all the social stratospheres of high school. There was a jock, and there was a goth, and everyone in that room was equal. And I never experienced that before, so it felt very safe, especially as a teenager. And yeah, it was the only, and still is kind of the only thing I understand as a trade. I'm kind of hopeless elsewhere. You know, I wanted to be a million things, but that was it just doesn't feel like work ever, you know? It just feels like an endless place. And yeah, I don't know, to what Hania was saying, it's like, I felt from an early age, like becoming a better actor makes you a better human, and becoming a better human makes you a better actor, and that's kind of a cool way to spend your life, you know?
I love the panoply here of what you guys have, they're all different. I didn't expect them to be the same, but they're deliciously different. What would the title of your memoir be about your life on stage?
Just getting started.
Just getting started. Who else?
Always a bridesmaid.
Mine would be, you want me to do what?
How did you memorize all those lines?
That's great. How do you know of role or a character is right for you? What's the process, the decision?
I think you know it at first read. You know, as soon as you read, you can identify with that character, and you can see a part of that character within yourself, or within yourself within part of that character. You know, it's a natural fit. It's like putting on a glove. You
So
know,
it's like getting up in the morning and being Patrick Briggs?
Sort of.
Sort of like that?
Sort
So
of like
you're
that.
drawn to what's inside you that you know about or want to know about, right?
Well, I think it's an identification with certain aspects of that character that you can see immediately. There's an immediate simpatico. You know what I mean?
Got it.
I usually just do whatever Kelly or Nico tells me. It's very wise. Yeah. No, they are knowledgeable. They know me, and so they see roles and will, suggest things. Or if I'm auditioning, I've read the part, read the character, and to agree with what Pat says, you identify immediately with something in that character. Or, typically, we almost. Not every character, I want to say, not every character is archetypal, but there is something sort of special about that moment that the author has chosen and unique about that person, and they're stuck in some particular way or free in some particular way. And so what I find is like, and speaking of simpatico, when I did simpatico at New Mexico Actors Lab, I did not exactly identify with the struggles, the particular struggles that Vinny was going through, but I had other struggles of my own that I could reach into and use as a resource. And so what I find is in agreeing to a role or auditioning for a role, there has to be that identification or even a desire to explore that part of yourself and discover, how far can I go with this, and do I feel safe enough to go all the way there for that character? If you don't identify, if you don't feel safe, then it's probably not right for you.
That's really good to know, no matter what you're choosing to do in life.
Yeah, no matter what you do.
Yeah, right. How about the rest of you guys?
I agree a lot with what they say, because you can sort of feel a tug. It seems to be the right thing to do. But one of the other things that I find a little bit interesting throughout this time has been that is when you don't think it's the right role for you, but somebody else does, and once you dive into it, you're like, oh, well, maybe that does kind of work for me after all. And it can be surprising, you really can.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. I feel like I gravitate towards roles that are most unlike me. That's why I played Richard III last summer. But because, first of all, it's a practical thing. It's like, well, I can just start with the differences and focus there. But then it's just fun to do things that you'll never do, I'll never have a kingdom. But it's also that too. Sometimes you see something in a character and you just go, yeah, that's important. Like, I believe in that. Like, I want to be a part of telling that story. Because in the end, we're all just storytellers, right? And storytelling is, as I heard Aaron Sorkin say recently, is older than religion. It's profoundly human. I feel like we need it, no matter what kind of, whether it's a Marvel story or a Shakespeare play or anywhere in between. I think everyone needs stories. And we do too as actors. We just act them out.
I would add to that also that there is a certain amount of, characters that are written on the page. You may have seen a performance of that character before, but there's a certain amount of creativity that we are allowed in bringing that character to life. And so there's, we have to use our imagination, so we're not just identifying, but bringing ourselves to that character and creating that character. So, my version of Don Pedro, for instance, was maybe different than somebody else's version of Don Pedro, and that's because of what I brought to it, or what they brought to it.
Is that conscious, or do you discover that as you're in the middle of the play or learning the play?
Yeah, both. Definitely both. I don't like to watch other performances for reference, unless it's something super complicated, I guess, but generally I don't, because it then allows me the freedom to really create the character that fits me. Not fitting the character to my story necessarily, but to bring that to life with the information that I have.
So if you're miscast, and actors do get miscast, mostly in film, I think, probably. Whose fault is that? The actor?
No. We have no control. We have none,
So
zero.
you wouldn't turn that role down knowing it's really not for you? You would say, this is my challenge?
I have turned a role or two down, just because, I think there are certain things that just don't fit, altogether. I don't need to give examples, but there are certain things. I've never been offered enough money to do a role that I really don't want. But the day may come.
Sometimes it takes playing the lizard, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I heard Jeffrey Wright interviewed, and he said Sidney Poitier came up to him at some point in his career and said, I'm going to give you some advice on how to act in one word. And it was irony.
What?
Irony. Irony. Any thoughts on that? Patrick's got his head. Yes, yes.
Well,
go for it.
Well, yeah, playing the irony or the antithesis of a character is often the more interesting and stronger choice for the actor, right? It can throw the audience just a little bit off center to where they're not expecting. You have to do your homework. So, just to play the irony is not quite enough. You have to do your homework. You're going to have to walk in this guy's shoes, but it's still you walking in those shoes, right? So, you have to bring, yes, you can play the irony, but you have to bring all that stuff. You have to do your script analysis. You have to do, your pitch, pace, pause, emphasis, inflection, and volume. You have to do all that kind of stuff. And then you have to filter it all through your own emotional landscape, because that's all you got. Always remember that for every character is the hero of his own story. So, even the most villainous, he's the hero of his own story. So you have to play that, and that's irony in itself.
Yeah, I get it. Anybody else?
I've always found that those are the most exciting things to do. The people that are classified as villains, whether they are or not, is to find why they're doing what they're doing, and it's a fun challenge to make people like you as a villain, and that really messes up their heads.
Yeah, or even in melodrama, the audience has to believe that the villain wants what he wants or she wants, right? You have to believe that they are dedicated to their objective, and whether or not they get it at the end is a different story. But if you don't play that 100% dedication or belief in yourself, then the audience won't go with you there. They won't boo and hiss you even. They'll just say that performance fell flat,
Any other thoughts?
I'd be curious what Jeffrey writes. What was his response to that? Because to
Well,
me it seems
what-
kind of vague.
What game meant?
I would have been confused by that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What do you mean? Thanks and me. Yeah.
What he meant by that is you have to know, get out of the box of the character that's probably been superimposed, at least at the beginning. You have to get out of that box and know more about that character than that character knows about himself or herself.
Sure,
Does that make sense?
It does,
Yeah.
that's homework.
yeah.
Well, I think, isn't it Diderot that wrote The Paradox of the Actor? Which is that you're simultaneously a character and an actor aware of their performance.
And if you don't suffer,
Yeah, yeah.
and the first act isn't different from the last act because you're exhausted, you're really not acting, you're just reciting dialogue. Yes, no?
Go ahead.
That's what you
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if, I don't know, if in a moment, in a scene, your character is distraught or devastated, but then there's resolution and reward later, you can't play my dad always told me, don't play the end of the scene before you get there.
Feet on the line.
And yeah, so being in the moment, but still knowing the next moment as the actor, but not as the character. And if that's irony, I guess, then he's right. And I would add that, a lot of humans strive to conceal their true emotions. So I was told at one point that it's more powerful to hold back your tears than to let them stream down your face. Although sometimes that's not possible. When I played Ned Weeks in The Normal Heart at the Playhouse, I was going through a gnarly breakup. And so those emotions of loss were super close to the surface and really easy to access. And it just made sense that this character was so devastated at the end of the show and vulnerable and felt safe in the moment and alone, perhaps, that the tears just streamed and just came out as they were. And there was no holding back that emotion. But again. You don't get there until you get there.
Yeah. I was 2 feet from Brent this weekend when they sang Send in the Clowns, and he started to cry. I cried all the way home.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Which brings me to audience, and you guys have talked a little bit about influence on it. What do you need the audience for? What happens from here to there that's important, that you treasure, you hate, whatever? So where do we fit?
Well, cell phones.
Cell phones.
Yes.
All you want is that.
Yes, we desire your full attention, for one. Let's see, what was the question again?
What do you need an audience for?
What do I need an audience for? Oh, yeah. If you go out there and the audience isn't with you, I'd rather be digging ditches,
Yeah.
to be honest.
How do you know that?
Oh,
You can
you
just know.
know.
Tell us so we know how to
You know.
behave.
When you have the audience and the audience is with you and you have it in the palm of your hand, it can take a mediocre performance and make it really good. It can take a good performance and make it great. Because the energy transfer between the actor and the audience is palpable. And you feel it, and it bolsters you up as an actor, right? I worked in the canteen. I don't know if you remember La Casa Santa Cantina. I worked in there in the early 90s for 6 years. And boy, if I didn't have that audience, they were 2 feet in front of me. And if I didn't have them, I sure knew it. If they wanted another margarita, I knew that too. But if you got them, boy, you got them. And then it's a song.
You know how you go up here and you take a hike and you can start to hear the silence? It's like that. And what's powerful about that is you're all in the same place. It's shared, it's not it's not totally about look at me. Of course we're all actors, so it's a little bit about look at me. But it's about going somewhere together. And it's just a sixth sense of oh, they're going here with me. Awesome. Or Oh, they're not. And of course, if it's a comedy, it helps because they're not laughing at the, but yeah, it's just a kind of energy in the room that I think you get kind of attuned to pretty quickly once you're up here. Because it's kind of a lifeline. I mean, I had a teacher once tell me that I guess they did some scientists did some tests on actors and they found that the adrenaline level of an actor going out on stage is equivalent to an astronaut being shot into space. And so we're honestly a lot of the time fucking terrified of you. So we need you, to ground us. Are you here with me? Are you on the moon with me? Okay, I can breathe. And it really is. It really is it's a reciprocal relationship, which is why I'm have so much gratitude for what y'all do with the Theater Artists Club. I mean, we need you guys. We're nothing without an audience.
Well, there but for a little talent. Well, actors here. I mean, I'm on stage with you guys. I mean, wow. This is on my resume now. Yeah, I never do anything, but
You're natural.
And often the audience is, if you're on stage alone and you're doing your soliloquy or a monologue or whatever, often the audience is your other actor. That's who you can play off. I love breaking the fourth wall. I love going and looking somebody straight in the eye in the audience and talking right to them, and sometimes it makes them a little nervous. It's okay, but it helps me as an actor. It helps me make that connection.
that's called reciprocal gaze. Did you know that?
I did not.
It's a film concept of meeting the eye, or looking over Deb's shoulder and not, in Triumph with a little neck music, it's so small. And I was as close to you as I was to Brent the other night. I felt bad for the actors because they were trying to pretend like we weren't there, and we were so there. I don't, do you guys know this? The responsibilities of an actor, is that true? Everybody here know all that?
What are the responsibilities of an
The
actor?
responsibility of an audience.
We have responsibility.
Oh, an audience. I meant to say audience.
Sounds like we have responsibility.
I never, because there are some people I can see, they don't know what they're doing there.
Yep.
They don't. And I hope enough of us that do, that you know that.
What is our responsibility as an audience?
Pay attention.
Well,
Stay off your cell phone.
Be
Well,
respectful.
what did you come to see the show for? Why are you there? What is your intention in going to see a play? I would hope that it is to get lost in the story with us, right? To
Jump on the train.
not just to escape, but to take a journey, to go there with us. And the proof of that is in these things we've been saying. And I watched this TED Talk a long time ago. This guy was talking about music performance. He was talking about, playing the piano and how some performers stick too much to the rhythm and then the music's just not alive. And when it's alive, the audience has shining eyes, is how he described it, shining eyes. And we get that too. And when you're with us, we may not be looking at you, but we can see your eyes shining, and we can feel that energy exchange. And that's your intention as an audience member, to go to the theater, and we would hope that we can get you there, and it's to be a part of the show in that way, not just to watch something or witness something or be just entertained, but to go there with us and to lose yourself in that story.
Are we singing?
Of course, darling.
For myself, you all go to theater and you just said to listen to the play or to understand the plot. For me, I'm just in awe. I don't care what the plot is, just watching you guys. How do you remember that shit? And then, I'm just in wow, look at that. And then when I think about you're a carpenter, you're a tree guy, or whatever you're doing, and then this is what you do for your fun, so you can share with us. You know, it's like, wow, what a gift.
Thank you.
I don't do it because it's fun. It is fun, but that's not why I do it. I do it because I love to do it, because it makes me feel good. Not just that I'm having a good time, but when we exchange that energy, we create community. And that is so important, I think, in the world. And it's something that's just, it feeds my soul. You know, it is fun. And I would say there's a lot of, like, to answer your direct question, how do you memorize all that shit? It's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of recitation, a lot of practice, a lot of borrowing friends and stuffing a book in their hands and say the other lines. But it's also losing ourselves in the story. That once I'm that character and I'm in that story, there's a certain inevitability to what happens next. That I am this person and this is how I, as this person, would react. And yes, I've repeated those lines over and over again, but there's that inevitability, and I'm just in the story. So it's the story, and then the blocking and positioning on stage. It's all of that. It's the relationships that help me memorize the lines. It's not just recitation. It's not just memorization. It's losing myself, as we would hope you all do in the story.
I'd just like to say the same words you say, you can't stop yourself from doing it. As an audience member, I have that same addiction, as he knows. I need theater. Theater to me it's transformative, it's magic. I was the president of a theater company up in Alaska that our mission statement was theater as a vehicle for social change. And I really believe, and when I go to a play, I enter your world. You take me someplace that I've never been before. And I experience what somebody else is experiencing. And I believe that for me, that's a way of changing the world. And that's why I'm so glad to see some of our theater companies really tackling things. Many of our companies this time are really tackling things that have, I don't mean preaching messages, but that really capture you and say, let's look at situations, let's feel these situations, and what can I, as an audience member living in the world, do slightly differently because of the theater experience I shared last night.
Absolutely.
Okay, on memory, on learning lines. Who else has another technique? Hania's explained his.
I hike with my dogs.
You sorry?
I hike with my dogs and repetition. You know, I go up on the hills in the mountains here in the Galisteo Basin, and people look at me kind of strange. Sometimes ask me if I'm all right. But that's how you, you know, it's just repetition is how you get it in your head. And then it's once you're on the stage, then it's all the blocking helps you memorize. So, you know,
All the
the other actors help you memorize, you know, what's going on. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I usually put like a first round of stuff on my phone, just the lines, so they're sitting there. If I'm stuck in traffic or something, it's like, let me just do that real quick. And then once I have the words in my head, hopefully, I get on the elliptical machine and I can kill two birds with one stone there, because it's like, well, you can do another 2 minutes and you'll get another scene out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of little techniques that help, you know. Some people say, well, do it first thing in the morning, or right before you go to bed, or make sure you're walking, or make sure you're breathing deeply, and all that stuff helps. But yeah, I think it's just, you know, it's just time spent, you know. You all know your favorite song like the back of your hand, right? Because you spent so much time with it.
So do you record it and listen to it and learn it like a song?
Auditory learning is something that I've come to recently that is actually quite helpful. Hearing it rather than reading it, I think is very helpful. But yeah, it's like a muscle. So the more you do it, it does get easier. You know, it does get easier, and you just keep doing it. And,
I can't do the auditory thing, but I will write all of them out. So it's like a repetition. It's just, again, we've all said repetition, spending time with it, and getting as many methods of spending time with it as possible. So I read it all the way through. I read it out loud. I write it down so that I'm reading it and writing it, and then I burn those pages. I can't read the handwriting anyway, but it's not about that. It's just about the repetition. One of my favorite tricks is to do something else. And I think that's like, hiking with your dogs or getting on the elliptical. And it's like when
doing the dishes,
Right,
like do something else, do anything else. And then when you get to the stage, you can do whatever. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You have your lines. And so, a lot of times you're on stage trying to create business, right? So that, it's like maybe your character is folding laundry or doing the dishes or cooking something or, wiping the table or something is happening because they're supposed to be whole, real people. One of my favorite moments, I was rehearsing lines with Jeffrey Pomeroy for Simpatico, and he came over to my house, and I was making mac and cheese, and then I was just eating the mac and cheese, and we were just reciting our lines, and it was just like, do anything else other than what your character is supposed to be doing, their business. And then, should anything happen on stage, you can be doing anything, and you still have your lines. If somebody is not in the right position for the blocking, if somebody goes up on their lines, if somebody falls down, or somebody coughs and a cell phone goes off in the audience, anything could happen. But if you've done anything else, then you're prepared. And that's my favorite
I will
trick.
say though that it ain't as easy as it used to be. I used to be able to read the script, slip it under my pillow, sleep on it, and I'd have the lines. Yeah.
And your hair used to be the same color as it.
Yeah.
So here's my question. So when we come in and we see, let's say, a 60-minute presentation, how many hours did you guys put into that 60 minutes?
Oh, God.
Oh, lots.
I mean, like
It's-
1,000? 2,000?
No.
750?
It depends on what that 60-minute presentation is.
Yeah.
And how in-depth it is, and whether you're playing a character, playing yourself, or what you're doing.
But nevertheless, 40 hours, 80 hours?
I mean, a rehearsal process.
For just a part, just to play a part in a play,
Yeah.
I would say there's several hundred hours of homework that is done in order to wrap yourself around that character and know who that person is and be able to portray it with accuracy.
Well, that's okay.
But that's just like the rehearsal process and the homework and that kind of thing for each role,
Mm-hmm.
We all bring a lifetime of experience to our characters.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
33 years,
Yeah.
that's how long it's taken me.
You're the baby.
How important?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So the shows of how important is it for you to shed that character, or is it? And if it's important,
I think that's another thing that depends on the role. I mean, if you're doing something super heavy, and it also depends on the style, if it's a farce or if it's extremely naturalistic. But I'm very I guess there always has been, but there seems to be more than ever this trend in film of these method actors that have to live it. They have to go live on the farm and learn how to skin an animal, you know, just so it's and to me that's very unhealthy. That's you're not acting, you're not playing, you're just being, and you're suffering in your being and having someone film it. And I think you know there was this debate that I don't know if anyone watched the television show Succession. If you haven't, you should, because it's a brilliant show made by a bunch of theater people. But there was a kind of there was a New Yorker article profile on Jeremy Strong, and they kind of threw him under the bus for being one of these kind of actors. And then there's someone, you know, Brian Cox plays the patriarch in that show, and he's just kind of like, I guess he was quoted as just saying like, it makes me nervous how much Jeremy has to go through to, and you know I'm gonna take Brian Cox over Jeremy Strong, and you know I think he's the superior actor, but he's just playing, you know, he's just playing, and I think if you can't leave it on the stage, I think you've gone too far. That's a little bit of a generalization, but that's you know. Especially, I mean, more than ever, I think, you know, I think self-care is kind of a new way to look at things for everyone. But it's coming into the theater. That's and for actors, I think that's why there's stuff like intimacy directors now. It's like, oh yeah, you shouldn't just have to go like, okay, let's make out, person I've never met. Like there should be a way into that feels safe and structured for everyone. So, but yeah, I try not to take anything home.
Yeah.
And to have that sense of play. We're players. It's a play, you know.
Mm-hmm. Who else?
There's only been, you know, generally I don't have that issue. You know, you leave the outside at the stage door, and you leave the inside at the stage door. The only play that I've ever done where I couldn't quite shake it was actually with Nico over here, and that was Quality of Life, where I played a man whose daughter had been violently murdered, just recently violently murdered. I have 2 daughters of my own. It was difficult to shake it until I could touch base with each of those girls, you know, and know that they were okay. But still, it would invade my dreams. Just, yeah, the horror of that situation was, it affected me like no other show that I've ever done did affect. Maybe that's why I don't do drama much.
Okay, anybody else have on it? And we'll go to the audience with questions. Anybody?
That's why Shakespeare's great too, because Shakespeare was written before, you know, Freud and stuff. So, you don't have to get too psychological. It's, you know.
I agree, you know, with everything these guys said. Sometimes I will, I try to bring as much from home, like not the bullshit or the stress of like work or whatever, but that's my resource, my personal experience, right? And so, in trying to bring as much of myself to the creation of my characters, I'm tapping into, you know, real emotions and things like that, things that I am experiencing. But as I said before, for me, it's a way to process those things. And so it's like helpful in understanding those things, and it's you know so yeah, I don't know if it's like I don't have to shake it off once I go on my way home, you know, because it's just me going home, you know, I'm playing me on stage, but there is like a certain amount of play that is happening also, and that safety of, you know, you as an audience, well, now you know, but you don't know that it's my stuff I'm doing on stage. You don't know it's my emotions that I'm dealing with on stage. And that creates a certain amount of safety and enables me to play with it. And like I said before, when I played Ned Weeks, I was going through this like rough breakup, and so it was very real and very emotional, the feeling of loss. There wasn't any need to then like shed the character.
Let it all out.
Yeah, you let it out all on stage, and then you go home feeling good, but then the next day you're depressed again. You've all been through a breakup, I'm sure. So, I think one of the things that I would recommend if you get into it is to actually shake it off. So physically shake your body, go dancing, do something physical, go for a jog, that kind of stuff. It's a physical way, we've all heard somebody say, oh, shake it off, But that's real. Animals do that after a traumatic experience, and it releases trauma from the body. So if you're dealing with a heavier character, literally shake yourself, and that will help release that energy from your body. You can return to yourself.
I heard one actor say she draws an imaginary circle, stands in it, is her character, and steps out, ritualizes it. Anyhow, Marty, you have a question.
Yeah, many years ago at the Guthrie at a talk back, one of the actors was saying, if I was living it, I couldn't make you feel it.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Less is more.
Right, I mean, in response to the method and the, whatever, and that just made a lot of sense in terms of.
Right.
I think that's like what Alexander was saying earlier about the paradox of being the actor and the character at the same time. If you're experiencing them, then you're not really doing the work of displaying or bringing the audience.
Right, you're not allowing the audience to come to you.
Right.
And
Right,
then
you can't feel for them.
You're alone on stage.
Yeah.
That's when
That's when the aloneness, okay.
That's why we maybe don't agree.
See, Nico has his hand up in the back.
I've got a two-part question here. You've mentioned storytelling. Most of you have talked about how the actor's job is to tell the story. How do you determine what the story is, and then what do you do when the director has a different idea about what the story is?
You trying to prepare me for something?
Just say it.
Communicate. It's just communication. As an actor, you're hired to portray the vision of the director, right? That's your job. If there's a problem with it, you have to communicate. No director wants you to do a bad job. They don't want you to suck up there. They want you to do the best that you can, and they're going to try to help you do that. It's just communication, strictly. Then you can find out exactly what the director wants and where he wants it to come from, and then you can maybe twist it around to your interpretation.
I think you can avoid the dilemma. You can sort of avoid the dilemma by not coming into the rehearsal space with preconceived notions about what the story is, right? To not do too much research on your character first, or make these decisions about who your character is, because you're exploring, the director's vision of the story, and also the relationships that you have yet to develop with the other actors and characters in that story, right? And so if you come to the rehearsal space with all these decisions made already about, I know what the story is, I know how to tell it, then you're forcing yourself to be alone again. And I don't think this alone is the same kind of alone. I don't know who picked this guy. But you don't want to isolate yourself from your scene partners, from your director. If you do have an idea of what your story is, I've had a thought where it's like, oh, I think this is the story, but like Pat said, that communication, like, okay, but director is trying to tell a different story. What is that story, and how do I, as an actor, do my job and facilitate that story? Because I am not the most important person in the room. It's the relationships. It's the story that the author has and the vision that the director has.
Does that answer, Nico?
That's, yeah, there are multiple ways of
Great.
approaching it, but yeah.
Right,
Yeah, it's complex, it's much more complicated.
You'll never hire me again.
Yeah.
I think it also, it's just I think like, it's a feeling. It doesn't feel right. There's more to explore. I know that that's kind of vague, but you know, I've always preferred Spencer Tracy's view on acting, or when he was asked, what is asking? You look the other guy in the eye and you tell the truth. It doesn't feel honest, or does it feel contrived? Does it feel, oh, well, I'm just doing this because that person told me to, you know? And I'm gonna go a little out on the edge here and say, like, I don't feel like our job is 100% fulfilling the director's vision. I think it's fulfilling the writer's vision to the best of your ability, with often them not being in the room or not being on this earth. Fulfilling the director's vision and fulfilling your own vision. And what's the Venn diagram of that? Whatever's in the center, that's probably going to be your surest shot.
And getting there is.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. Everybody's interested in the truth.
yeah.
You know, that's the most, yeah.
And if you know, there's the old adage, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. You gotta start with a good script. If it's a shit script, you're just, you might as well be digging ditches. You know? There's gotta be truth in the writing.
There's that,
Yeah.
because I've heard some guys say that actors are really artificial because they're just saying someone else's words.
Oh, that's not right. That's not
I'm stunned to hear this person say
It's like concert pianist, artificial.
Yeah, if you're not Mozart, you can't
Yeah.
do it, sort of a thing. Anyhow, this is really juicy. Anybody else have a thought on that question? Or ready for another question? Who's got? John first.
You guys are all such wonderfully talented actors. Yes, you are. But my question to all of you is, why Santa Fe? What brought you and what's made you stay in Santa Fe?
I grew up here. I was in New York and Chicago for 15 years. This COVID thing happened, and I was in a one-bedroom apartment in a huge building in Chicago. And as soon as it became apparent what that thing was going to be, I was like, "Oh, I'm not staying here." And so long story short, I came home, and what I found was potential. I grew up here, so I had a frame of reference. I left because there wasn't much here. But what I see now, right now, I didn't do stuff like this in Chicago. We were doing plays for other actors. It was just this bubble, you know? There's over 200 theater companies in Chicago. It's a big town, but it ain't that big, you know? People care here. And there's potential, there's room for growth, and to build something that we can a little bit call our own. And that's deeply meaningful. Especially if it's home. But you know, I have the highest hope for what can happen here. Now, you know, people that have been here for a long time, Nico, you've seen it go. And I don't want to get too idealistic, but I've never seen the pieces in place in this town like I do right now, and that's worth at least the next 5 years.
So what
brought you back to Santa Fe?
Well, I'd spent like 30 years in New York, which was a great, wonderful experience, and was kind of ready for a change. I was getting a little worn out. And so we have been here only one time on vacation. There was a great opportunity for my partner here, work-wise, and because he was ready for a change also. And so we came out 2 times for just to look around and see where the places were to live, and we were like, all right, this is what we're doing. and we've had a great time. So we're here for a bit. I don't know.
Good for you. I went back to Connecticut. We lived in Connecticut for a while, and I found that I really just don't like the crush of humanity. I like the open spaces. I like being able to go out in the mountains and hike. I like the big open blue sky. That's what makes me hum and what makes me tick. You know, I don't need to go on vacation. I'm here.
Well, I came out here for St. John's for school, so I went to college here, and then I didn't really feel like I had a chance to live in town when I was at school, because I lived on campus all 4 years, and so I decided to just kind of see what Santa Fe was about, and I liked the energy of this place, and like Pat, I don't like the crush of humanity. I sort of like the smaller groups, you know. I never felt called to a big city, and then it's really like, you know, I could garden anywhere, but it's really the theater in this town that has kept me here because I love it so much, you know, and people gave me chances to do stuff. People like you all enjoyed the stuff that I did, and I couldn't help it but stick around. And then I absolutely 100% agree with what Alexander said about feeling the energy and the potential and watching it grow over the past decade that I've been doing it. That it's really phenomenal, and the passionate people who support the theater community like yourselves are, you know, just, it's so rewarding to be, you know, performing for you all. And I've met so many great friends and worked with wonderful actors in this little community, and I've been just absolutely thrilled and happy to be a part of it all. So
Yeah, we've seen theater grow leaps and bounds in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's just, the growth has been amazing.
Why do you think that has happened?
Some of it's Benny for sure.
Sure, I think it's the leaders of all of these companies, you know what I mean? I think it's Benny, it's Pat and Kelly, it's Nico, you know, it's all these people who have really dedicated their lives and their hearts to the theater community here, and us actors. I mean, Pat, you're all of the above, but like Alexander said, I agree. We feel that. We feel that heart, and it's a very loving community, and it's love that makes it grow, I think.
Yeah, you know, and there's energy vortexes. There is such a thing as energy vortexes that you know, it starts around a kernel, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows, and that's, I think, the way it's kind of gone over the last 10 years. You know, there's a desire for better theater, for better quality, for up in the production values, all of that, and it's just it's showing.
I also think the growth of the film community here, I think, is part of it, because for the first time that I know of, actors are moving here from Los Angeles and, you know, places like that, because it's getting so big. And so you've got actors here now, and when, you know, that business is this far from hopeless. I mean, you audition 100 times for every one thing you get, and that's a day if you're lucky, a week if you're
super lucky.
Yeah. And then so you've got all these actors, and we're hungry, so we're like, wow, theater, you know? And theater, at least for me personally, is the other side of the equation. And so you start to have a bench, you start to have a roster. I think I've heard, Nico, I've heard you say, like, we've got the actors in town to do this play that I've always wanted to do that play. And you know, and that's exciting, but I think it's, you know, why I left, and something that always found tragic about Santa Fe is it's such a magical community, but young people often feel kind of ostracized or like there's not a lot for them here. And I feel like in small ways that's starting to change, and I think that young people help the ecosystem of a community, and so the more that they can stay here, feel like they're, stuff like Meow Wolf wasn't around when I was a kid, but stuff like that really goes, okay, there's something for me here, and I can invest myself into this rather than running to the anthill of New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago, which is just, yeah. What do you call it, the crush of humanity?
The crush of humanity.
We're already
Yeah.
over. Jim has
This
his
gentleman's been
hand up.
trying to ask a question for a
I was
while.
just gonna
Yeah, I
ask.
just
Am I
want,
running
you
over?
mentioned young people.
I could talk
Oh.
all night.
Most of the audiences, I have more gray hair than, I don't know, like, older, how do you get younger people to come to theater here in town? I mean,
Boy, that is the
That's the
age-old question.
what can you do?
Hey then.
You pay the free tickets, discounted tickets. I mean, there's a lot of strategies. I've been brainstorming. I've just recently joined the board of New Mexico Actors Lab, and I really hope I get to join the board of Santa Fe Classic Theater as well.
We'll see.
We'll see. There's no conflict of interest. Rising tide raises all boats. But I have this idea of trying to create more of an event around theater, and if it's includes a band, it includes maybe a food truck out front, things like that, an art show or whatever, but engaging in that community directly. So going to a band that is created by young people, then their following comes to this as a venue, and then they hear about that play, or it's happening, in sequence or something like that. But directly engaging with the things that community enjoys, I think, to sort of stimulate interest in coming to see theater, because you're absolutely right. Our audience is mostly gray hair. How do we get them here? It's industry nights, or discounted tickets, for students, or there's a pay what you will night or something like that, or
Have 20-second scenes.
yeah, turning it into an event, or taking the theater out into the community. We're doing outreach. We're doing outreach for like education and things like that to take it to the schools and to interest young people. But I think we're talking about the young people who are out of school and not, used to going to see theater.
My nephew said he wanted to be cared about. I asked him, why don't you want to go to theater? He said, I want them to want me to be there.
Right. Right. They're struggling with this in just about every major performance art, opera, symphonies, and theater. And I think that's exactly the point, that even if they dress the part, they still don't feel like they belong. And so how do we make them feel that they belong? And I grew up in the theater, so I'm curious about seeing theater. So, you don't have to worry about me. I feel cared about. But, the people who aren't familiar with it, how do we make them feel cared about or like they belong?
Yeah, I think Hania just hit on it. It's also about starting them young. If you grew up doing theater, or your parents took you to theater, then it's familiar. There's an appreciation. I think that's why so many more young people, I remember going to London for the first time. Fucking look at all these cool young people, what's the difference? But they grew up going to theater. It's part of the culture. It's part of the education. And here, I had a coworker ask me recently, and I know he didn't mean it. It was earnest, but it was very telling. He said, do you ever do real acting, like movies?
Yeah.
But that's because that's what we know in America.
Right.
Everyone grows up watching movies. What is it, like 12% of people, I think it's like 12 or 18% of America goes to see a play in a given year. I mean, it's dreadful. It's really dreadful. But I think
And the prices are,
and the prices are exorbitant.
Wonderful things I saw was Triumph. because it's a younger cohort of people who are doing it. They're inviting their friends. So their friends are coming to see them, and Maryland has wanted them to be all in their 20s or 30s at the most. And then
Thank God you got over that, huh?
for just that reason, to bring in a younger cohort of people who've studied maybe in high school and college, but then they didn't have anywhere to perform. So their friends wouldn't come and see them. Friends will go see kids in high school plays. They'll, they want to go see their friends, or they want to be part of it. So I think if we can bring in younger actors, this is where I think we have a shame in our city. We no longer have Santa Fe University of Art and Design, or the community, or the Santa Fe College, which is kind of a feeder for younger actors that wanted to stay in Santa Fe
There
after
was
they
a great
graduated.
pool.
And
Now
now,
you're gonna have to say the career though, you're gonna have all these film
Yeah.
opportunities, training in every craft and other stuff like that.
Well,
and I think, the point Alexander made earlier about coming back and feeling the energy, like Meow Wolf is here, the film industry here, there are more things now even than there were to keep young people in Santa Fe, so, but then the college is gone, so, that kind of thing. So, I think I praise the gods for the Upstart Crows as well.
Exactly.
That's really wonderful, but are they gonna stay in town? Can we convince them to stay in town? Are there enough job opportunities? Are there enough affordable living situations, right? The cost of living is insane here in San Diego.
We're into Santa Fe, aren't we, with all of this? This is a really meaty, juicy discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you for being willing to go over. Jim, you had your hand up. One last question. Do you still want to ask it, or has it been
I
answered?
was just asking if they care about the collaboration of the theaters. Does it help
Hell yeah.
that
Oh, yes.
working
Hell yeah.
for you in terms of making sure that everybody is working together, as opposed to the theater guild that fell apart 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we're working towards. Let's wrap with what's up next for you guys that these people want to know about.
Well, I will be assistant directing and performing in 12th Night at the Botanical Gardens with Santa Fe Classic.
Cool.
I will also be involved with 12th Night. I will be doing the set and design, building, and painting the set. That's going to be my gig for the summer.
Cool.
After Night Music ends, I'm going to be working on a new piece with Scott Harrison called Seeds with Alex, which is nice.
But that's Ironweed for.
Yes, sorry.
So everybody's got a job. All right, thank you. This was. That everything you need to know about what's going on in theater is on the Theater Santa Fe website. You can go onto that website, click on TLC and join. That means you get emails every week about what's going on right in your inbox. So theatersantafe.org. Up next, on March 23rd, we have a double header. TLC does a double header Steps Out with Playhouse. They've got 2 plays in rep. We're doing that. April 20th, we're doing A Wise Fool Steps Out. Then in May 9th or 10th, we're going to do Playhouse again. And then we're going to do Ironweed. So there's all kinds of stuff going on just like this. Also, Steps Out is an invitation to the actual performance with a benefit, a talkback, meet the actors, a little ticket discount sometimes.
And Dan, happy to say I have a couple more doing Romeo and Juliet with Insight Shakespeare Company this summer.
Awesome.
Playing Mercutio to Jeffrey Pomeroy's Tybalt, so that's going to be a blast. And then doing a play that's very dear to my heart with Nico in September called Burn This, Lansford Wilson play that's just really excited about it.
This is great. We are so glad that you are here. Thank you for doing this. We did
Thank
the
you.
Girls in the fall, a different ballgame. with the guys.
I'm sorry I missed it. I would like to hear
Well,
what it is.
I asked Brent to be in it, and he said, oh, I can't do that. He's a little bit shy. And then he saw what fun it was, like tonight, and so he was the lead, and the reason why this happened here, because he supported it, and he said, I want to do that. And we said, okay.
Thank you.